My mother taped a pay or quit notice to my bedroom door, while my 28-year-old brother sat in the living room playing video games. Claiming he was finding himself, she demanded $1,500 or told me to leave since I was an adult. I simply nodded because I had a deed of sale in my pocket she knew nothing about. When she declared that this building was hers, I just smiled. Not anymore. My name is Bianca Sterling, and I was currently watching my mother destroy the paint on my front door. The sound of packing tape ripping off the roll echoed through the stale hallway of the Briar Hollow apartments like a gunshot. It was 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. Most mothers would be calling to ask if you had eaten breakfast or to wish you a good day at work. My mother, Marlene Sterling, was busy turning my living situation into a public spectacle. She smoothed the neon pink paper against the wood grain at eye level. The color was aggressive, designed to shame. In bold, black letters that I could read from 3 feet away, the header screamed, "Pay or quit." It was the kind of notice landlords used for tenants who were months behind on rent. The deadbeats who trashed units and skipped town. I was neither. I was her daughter. Marlene stepped back to admire her handiwork, her heels clicking sharply on the linoleum floor that had not been waxed in at least a decade. She crossed her arms, clutching a leather handbag that cost more than 2 months of the rent she was demanding. "You know the rules." "Bianca," she said, her voice devoid of any maternal warmth. It was the voice she used when she wanted to pretend she was a titan of industry. "Rent is due on the 1st. Today is the 2nd. Late is late." I tightened my grip on the strap of my work bag. I felt the heat rising in my neck, a mix of humiliation and a cold, hard anger that I had been nursing for 6 months. I looked at the paper again. $1,500. I said. My voice was steady, surprising even me. "You are charging me $1,500 for a 1-bedroom apartment with a leaking faucet and a heater that rattles like a dying engine. And now you are pasting eviction threats on my door because the bank transfer takes 24 hours to clear." "Cash flow is the lifeblood of business," Marlene said, reciting a line she had probably read on a motivational calendar. "If you cannot manage your liquidity, that is not my problem. The lease says the 1st. You pay the late fee too. $50. I started to argue, to point out that there was no lease, only a verbal agreement we had made when I moved back to Ridgehaven to get my feet on the ground after my medical debt crisis. But before I could speak, the door across the hall opened. The hinges squeaked, a sound I knew better than my own breathing. My brother, Tyler, leaned against his doorframe. He was 28 years old. He was wearing flannel pajama pants and a graphic t-shirt that had a mustard stain near the collar. The smell of stale corn chips and air conditioning drifted out from behind him. Tyler rubbed his eyes and yawned, looking from the neon pink notice to me with a look of mild annoyance. "Just pay her, B," he said, his voice thick with sleep. "You guys are being loud." I was in the middle of a raid. I looked at him, really looked at him. He looked soft, unburdened. His skin was clear, his eyes bright despite the gaming fatigue. He looked like someone who had never stared at a ceiling fan at 3 in the morning wondering how to afford groceries. "You are awake," I said. "That is a surprise. Do you have $1,500? Tyler. Or maybe just the 50 for the late fee." Tyler scoffed and scratched his stomach. "Come on, do not be toxic." I turned back to Marlene. She was looking at Tyler with a softness that made my stomach turn. It was the look one gives to a wounded puppy, not a grown man who refused to work. "Does he have a notice on his door?" I asked, pointing a finger at Tyler's clean, unmarked entrance. "Does Tyler pay $1,500? Marlene stepped between us, physically shielding her son from my question. Her face hardened. "Do not bring your brother into this," she snapped. "Tyler is in a transitional phase. He is sensitive. He is finding himself. Finding himself." I repeated. The phrase tasted like ash. He has been finding himself for 4 years. "Mom, while he finds himself in that apartment, who pays for his electricity? Who pays for his water? Who pays his rent? We are a family," Marlene said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "We support each other. Since you are the one with the corporate job and the fancy degree, you carry your weight. He needs time. You are the adult here. Bianca, act like one. I stared at her. I looked at the pink paper. I looked at Tyler, who offered me a lazy, pitying smile before retreating into his cave and closing the door. Okay, I said. I reached into my bag. I did not do the bank transfer. I knew she would pull something like this, claiming the digital funds did not arrive in time so she could tack on fees. I had gone to the ATM the night before. I had the cash in a bank envelope, ready for a rainy day. It seemed the storm was here. I pulled out the envelope. I counted the bills in front of her. $1,500, plus a $50 bill for your fee. Marlene's eyes lit up. The harsh businesswoman facade cracked just enough to reveal the greed underneath. She snatched the envelope from my hand. See, she said, her tone suddenly breezy. Was that so hard? It is about responsibility. Bianca. One day, you will thank me for teaching you how the real world works. I watched her closely. Directly above us, in the corner of the hallway, a domed security camera blinked with a faint red light. I had installed that camera myself 3 months ago, allegedly for security, but mostly because I needed a record. Marlene did not put the money in a folder. She did not mark a ledger. She opened her designer handbag, unzipped her personal wallet, and stuffed the cash right in next to her personal credit cards and grocery receipts. Thank you, Marlene, I said. She paused, looking at me sharply. It is Mom, or landlord. Do not be disrespectful. She turned and walked down the hallway, humming a tune, satisfied with her morning harvest. I stood there for a moment, listening to the click of her heels fade away. I reached up and ripped the pink notice off my door. It left a sticky residue on the paint. I did not go back inside my apartment. I walked down the stairs to the parking lot, my heart hammering a rhythm against my ribs. It was not fear, it was adrenaline. My car was a 5-year-old sedan, reliable and invisible, much like how my family viewed me. I unlocked it and slid into the driver's seat. The air inside was freezing, typical for a Pennsylvania morning in late October. I did not start the engine immediately. Instead, I reached over and popped the glove compartment. I moved aside the owner's manual and a stack of napkins to reveal a thick manila envelope tucked in the back. I pulled it out. The weight of it felt good in my hands. Inside was a stack of documents I'd spent the last 2 weeks compiling. There was a printout of a notarized affidavit. There was the business card of a lawyer named Evan Crowley, and there was a confirmation slip for an appointment at the bank later that afternoon. I looked up at the building. Briar Hollow Apartments was a brick rectangle that had seen better days. The mortar was crumbling, the gutters were sagging, and the landscaping consisted of dead bushes and dirt patches. It was ugly. It was falling apart. But looking at it now, I did not see a dump. I saw a battlefield. I started the car and drove out of the lot, checking my rearview mirror to make sure Marlene was not watching from a window. I drove 3 miles into town, past the rusting steel mills that had closed down 20 years ago and the new strip malls that were trying to replace them. I pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop on Main Street. It was a chain place, generic and brightly lit, filled with people typing on laptops and ignoring the world. It was perfect. I bought a black coffee, found a table in the back corner, and opened my laptop. I did not log into my work email. I did not check my social media. I navigated straight to the county website. The Ridgehaven County Recorder of Deeds portal was archaic. The interface looked like it had been designed in the late 90s. All gray buttons and Times New Roman font. It was slow, clunky, and absolutely unforgiving with the truth. I typed in the address, 1400 Briar Lane. I hit search. A spinning wheel appeared on the screen. My mother had spent my entire life telling us that she was a real estate genius. She claimed she owned the building and that she had bought it with inheritance money years ago. She walked around Briar Hollow like she was the queen of the castle, inspecting units, yelling at tenants, collecting cash. Everyone believed her. Even I believed her. Until the math stopped making sense. The screen refreshed. Property owner, Hollow Ridge Holdings, LLC. Mailing address, P.O. Box 899. Wilmington, Delaware. There was no mention of Marlene Sterling, no mention of any Sterling. I clicked on the History tab. The last deed transfer was 12 years ago. The signatory for the LLC was a management firm, not an individual. I sat back, the steam from my coffee curling up into my face. She lied. She had always lied. But this was a foundational lie. She did not own the building. She was the property manager. She was an employee. If she was just the manager, she had no right to pocket cash rents. She had no right to invent fees. And she certainly had no right to let her son live rent-free in a unit that belonged to a corporation. I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, but it woke me up. I was about to close the tab when a notification pinged on my phone. It was an email alert I had set up on a real estate watchdog site 3 days ago. The subject line made my blood run cold. Alert notice of default. Pre-foreclosure filed. I froze. I clicked the link. The document loaded on my phone screen. It was a formal legal filing against Hollow Ridge Holdings, LLC, the very building I had just left. The building where my mother was currently stuffing $1,500 of my hard-earned money into her purse was in default. The mortgage had not been paid in 4 months. I read the numbers. The amount in arrears was almost exactly the sum of the rents collected from the 8 units in the building over the last 4 months. The math clicked into place with a terrifying precision. The tenants were paying, I was paying, but the money was not going to the bank. My mother was not just charging me rent. She was stealing the operating costs of the building. She was bleeding the place dry, likely to fund her lifestyle and Tyler's eternal adolescence, while the actual ownership entity was sinking into debt. I looked around the coffee shop. No one was looking at me. The barista was grinding beans. A woman near the window was laughing on a video call. The world was normal, but my world had just tilted on its axis. I looked back at the screen, at the harsh legal language threatening to seize the property. If the building went into foreclosure, we would all be on the street. Me, Tyler, the neighbors, and Marlene would play the victim, crying about how the economy destroyed her empire. But there was another option. I touched the envelope on the table next to my laptop. The deed search was open. The default notice was open. Marlene thought she was the queen of Briar Hollow. She thought she held all the cards because she had the master keys and the loud voice. She thought I was just the obedient daughter who would pay $1,500 to keep the peace. I lowered my voice, whispering to the empty chair across from me. "So, you are not the landlord," I said. "You are just the collector." I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the bank appointment I had scheduled. "Good morning," I said when the receptionist answered. "This is Bianca Sterling. I have an appointment at 2 o'clock regarding a commercial loan inquiry. I would like to confirm that, yes, I will be bringing additional documentation regarding a distressed asset." I hung up. I looked at the image of the building on the county website. It was just a structure. Bricks, glass, wood. It did not care who owned it. It only cared who kept the roof from leaking and the heat on. My mother had told me to find my own way. She had told me I was the practical one. She had told me that business was about liquidity. I smiled, but there was no humor in it. It was the smile of someone who had just realized that the monster in the closet was actually just a person in a cheap mask. Not anymore. I closed the laptop with a snap. I picked up the envelope. I had work to do. 6 months ago, I did not think I would be a 30-year-old woman living in a ground-floor apartment that smelled faintly of damp carpet and other people's cooking. I had a plan. I had a trajectory. I was an analyst at a mid-sized logistics firm in Philadelphia, living in a studio that was small but entirely mine. Then, the American healthcare system collided with a corporate merger, and I was the casualty. It started with a sharp pain in my lower right abdomen during a Tuesday morning meeting. By noon, I was in emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix. By the time I was discharged 3 days later, I had a bill that decimated my savings because my insurance deductible was astronomical. 2 weeks after that, while I was still recovering on my sofa, I received an email stating that my position had been eliminated due to restructuring. I did the math. I had enough severance to cover 2 months of rent in the city, or I could move back to Ridgehaven, swallow my pride, and rebuild my safety net from the ground up. I chose what I thought was the responsible path. I called my mother, The day I moved back in was not a homecoming. There were no balloons, no warm meals waiting on the stove, no tears of relief that I was safe. There was only a clipboard. Marlene met me at the front door of Briar Hollow, not to help me carry boxes, but to outline the terms of my surrender. She stood there in a beige pantsuit, tapping a pen against a printed sheet of paper. "This is strictly business, Bianca," she had said, blocking the entrance until we had the talk. "I run a tight ship here. You know that. I cannot play favorites just because we share DNA. That would be unfair to the other tenants." I nodded, balancing a box of books on my hip, my surgical scar still twinging with every movement. I understood. I respected it. Even, I wanted to pay my way. "The rent is $1,500 a month," she stated. "First and last up front. Utilities are separate. You put the electric in your name. Water is billed by the building. So you pay me $50 flat for that. And no pets." I looked at her, stunned. $1,500 was the market rate for a renovated unit in this town, maybe even a little high. The unit she was offering me, apartment 1A, was not renovated. It was the unit next to the boiler room. "Mom," I said, shifting the box, "that is steep. I am doing this to save money. Can we do $1,200, just until I get a new job?" Marlene sighed, a long, suffering sound that suggested I was asking her to cut off her own arm. "This is the problem with your generation," she said. "You want handouts. If I lower the rent for you, I devalue the property. $1,500, take it or leave it." I took it. I wrote her a check for $3,000 right there on the hood of my car, depleting the last of my severance. I thought she was teaching me a hard lesson about resilience. I told myself that paying full price would keep our relationship clean, free of obligation or guilt. I was naive. The double standard did not reveal itself immediately. It crept in, like the mold in the bathroom ceiling I scrubbed every Saturday. It started with the parking spots. I was assigned a spot in the back lot, under a leaking sap tree that coated my windshield in sticky residue every morning. My brother, Tyler, had the covered spot right next to the entrance. Tyler lived in apartment 2B. It was a corner unit on the second floor, the largest in the building, with a balcony that overlooked the only patch of green grass on the property. He had been there for 4 years. I assumed, foolishly, that Tyler was paying a premium for that luxury. I assumed his job as a freelance brand consultant, a title that seemed to involve a lot of sleeping until noon, was lucrative. The reality hit me 3 weeks in when I was doing laundry in the basement. The coin machine was broken, eating quarters without starting the cycle. I was wrestling with the knobs when Tyler came down the stairs, carrying a basket of clothes. He did not have quarters. He did not even have detergent. He just dropped the basket on top of the dryer and turned to leave. "Hey," I called out, "the machine is broken, and you cannot just leave that there." He looked at me, confused. "Oh, Mom does it on Tuesdays." I paused, a bottle of bleach in my hand. "Mom does your laundry." "Yeah," he said, shrugging. "She has the key to the service override on the machines. It is free if you use the key. She grabs my stuff when she inspects the building." My stomach dropped. I had been feeding $10 a week into these rusted machines. "Does she do everyone's laundry?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Tyler laughed. "No, just mine. She knows I'm busy with the stream and the channel. Domestic stuff kills my creative flow." I went upstairs and asked Marlene about it. I asked if I could use the service key. She looked at me like I had asked to burn the building down. "That key is for management use," she said. "Tyler helps me with security monitoring. It is part of his compensation." Security monitoring meant Tyler sat in his living room and looked out the window occasionally while playing video games. I knew this because I could hear the bass of his games thumping through the ceiling. I worked at Northgate Compliance Group, a sterile corporate office 40 minutes away by highway. I had landed the job 2 weeks after moving in. It was a step down in title and pay from my old life, but it was steady. I spent 8 hours a day auditing expense reports and flagging policy violations. I was good at it. I could spot a padded receipt or a duplicate invoice from a mile away, every day. I drove to work, sat under fluorescent lights, and ground out the hours to ensure I had exactly $1,550 ready for Marlene on the 1st of the month. I packed my lunch. I drank the free office coffee. I did not buy new clothes. Meanwhile, Tyler was finding himself. Finding himself apparently required a lot of resources. When I came home at 6 in the evening, exhausted and carrying my groceries, I would often smell the rich aroma of pot roast or lasagna drifting from Tyler's door. Marlene cooked for him. She would bring Tupperware containers up to 2B, cooing about how he needed his protein. When I asked if there was any left over, she would pat my cheek. "You are so independent. Bianca," she would say, "you have always been the capable one. Tyler needs a little more nurturing. He is an artist at heart. The world is hard on sensitive men." She used my competence as a weapon against me. Being capable meant I deserved nothing. Being useless meant he deserved everything. One evening in August, the air conditioning in my unit died. The compressor seized with a violent clank. Leaving my apartment sweltering in 90-degree heat, I called Marlene. She told me to buy a fan. "I cannot get a technician out there until next week," she said. "Budgets are tight. Just open a window." 2 days later, I saw a brand new HVAC van parked outside. I felt a surge of relief, thinking she had pulled some strings. I walked out to meet the technician, but he was not heading to my unit. He was carrying a shiny new window unit up to apartment 2B. I stood in the hallway, sweat sticking my shirt to my back, and watched as they installed a high-efficiency cooling system for Tyler. I confronted her in the lobby. "You told me budgets were tight," I said, my voice shaking. "You told me to buy a fan, and you just bought Tyler a $500 unit." Marlene did not even blink. "Tyler has asthma. Bianca. Heat triggers his anxiety. Do you want your brother to have an attack? I am shocked you are so selfish." Selfish. The word hung in the air. I was paying $1,500 for a sweatbox. Tyler was paying $0 for a climate-controlled palace. "How does he pay you?" I asked, pushing harder than I ever had. "Does he write you a check? Does he transfer it? Because I see him ordering delivery food every day. But he claims he is broke." Marlene's eyes narrowed into slits. "His financial arrangement is private, just like yours is. Stop counting other people's money and focus on your own career. Maybe if you worked harder, you would not be so bitter about a little air conditioning." I went back to my hot apartment and sat in the dark. That was the night I started tracking the fees. It wasn't just the rent. Marlene was getting creative. In September, a notice appeared on my door: hallway maintenance fee, $45. I checked my lease, the generic template she had finally printed out from the internet 3 months in. There was no mention of hallway fees. When I queried it, she said it was for vacuuming and light bulb replacement. I had never seen anyone vacuum the hallway except me. When I spilled a bag of rice, in October, it was a trash sorting surcharge, $30. She claimed the city was fining the building for improper recycling. I knew for a fact that the city of Ridgehaven had a single-stream recycling program that did not require sorting. Then came the parking lot resurfacing contribution, $75. The parking lot had not been resurfaced since the Clinton administration. The potholes were deep enough to swallow a hubcap. I paid them. I paid them all because I was terrified of being evicted. I had no savings left to move again. I was trapped in a cycle where every dollar I earned at Northgate went directly into the black hole of Marlene's purse. I demanded receipts. She gave me handwritten scraps of paper on sticky notes. Received $75 for a lot. No tax ID. No official letterhead. The other tenants were suffering too. Mrs. Alvarez in 1B was a widow on a fixed income. I saw her crying in the laundry room once because Marlene had charged her a guest fee when her grandson visited for the weekend. It was just $20. Mrs. Alvarez had sobbed. "But I do not have it this week." Marlene said she would take it out of my security deposit. I helped Mrs. Alvarez fold her sheets, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was not just bad management. This was predatory. But I still didn't see the full picture. I thought Marlene was just greedy. I thought she was hoarding cash to renovate the building eventually. Or maybe she was just saving for retirement. I did not realize the desperation behind the greed until 3 nights ago. It was a Tuesday. I had stayed late at Northgate to finish a compliance audit on a vendor who was overbilling us. The irony was not lost on me. I drove home in the rain, my wipers slapping a rhythm of fatigue against the glass. When I entered the building, it was nearly 11 o'clock. The hallway was dark. The bulbs Marlene charged us to maintain had burned out weeks ago. I walked softly toward my door, trying not to wake anyone. As I passed the small office near the entrance, a converted closet where Marlene kept her files and sometimes sat to look busy, I heard a voice. The door was cracked open an inch. A sliver of yellow light cut across the floor. Marlene was inside. She was on the phone. Her voice was different from the imperious tone she used with us. It was high, tight, bordering on panic. I know, she was saying. I am moving money around. It takes time to clear. I stopped. I knew I should keep walking. Eavesdropping was childish, but my feet felt rooted to the linoleum. Yes, the notice came. She whispered, I saw it. You do not need to call the lawyer yet. I have a substantial payment coming in. There was a pause as she listened to the person on the other end. I held my breath. Don't worry, she said, and her voice dropped lower. But in the silence of the hallway, it was deafening. Bianca's rent is enough to cover the minimum this month. I squeezed an extra few hundred out of her for maintenance fees. It will hold the wolves back for another 30 days. My hand went to my mouth. She wasn't saving the money. She wasn't investing in it. She was using my rent, my hard-earned $1,500 plus the fake fees, to plug a hole in a sinking ship. And Tyler? I listened for his name. No, she said, sounding defensive. Tyler cannot contribute right now. We have discussed this. He is a long-term player. Once his platform takes off, look, just take Bianca's check. It clears tomorrow. I stepped back, the floorboard creaking under my boot. Marlene went silent. I rushed to my door, fumbling with the key, my hands shaking so hard I could barely turn the lock. I got inside and leaned against the door, sliding down until I hit the floor. I was not a daughter. I was not a tenant. I was the collateral. I sat there in the dark, listening to the rain hit the window. The anger that had been simmering for months began to cool into something harder, something sharper. She was using me to subsidize her golden child and hide her failure. She was charging me to live in a building she was failing to pay for. The next morning, she posted the pay or quit notice. That was the moment the sadness died. That was the moment I stopped looking for my mother's approval and started looking for the truth. I stood up from the floor of my dark apartment and walked to the window. Across the alley, I could see the light of the street lamp reflecting in a puddle. If she wanted to play by the rules of finance, if she wanted to talk about liquidity and cash flow, fine. I was a compliance analyst. I spent my life finding errors in the system, and I had just found the biggest error of all. I was going to audit my mother. The investigation began not with a magnifying glass, but with a rusted metal box in the lobby. I had lived at Briar Hollow for 6 months, and in that time, I had never paid much attention to the mail ritual. I usually grabbed my bills and retreated to my apartment. But now, with the knowledge of the default notice burning a hole in my mind, I became a watcher. I adjusted my schedule, leaving for work 20 minutes later than usual, timing my exit to coincide with the arrival of the postal carrier. It was a Thursday morning, the mail carrier. A weary man named David, who always wore shorts regardless of the temperature, shoved a stack of envelopes into the master slot. I stood by the vending machine, pretending to fumble for change, watching through the reflection in the glass. Marlene appeared almost instantly. She must have been watching from her office window. She did not walk. She marched. She unlocked the main panel with a proprietary snap of her wrist. Her fingers moved with the dexterity of a card shark. She sorted the mail rapidly. Utility bill for Unit 2A, coupon circulars, personal letters. Then, she paused. She held up a thick, white envelope. It was not addressed to Marlene Sterling. Even from 5 feet away, I could see the bold, red stamp on the front. Urgent. Open immediately. The addressee window showed 3 distinct words, Hollow Ridge Holdings. Marlene did not put it in a separate pile. She did not file it. She looked left, then right. She did not see me standing in the shadow of the vending machine. With a quick, fluid motion, she slid the envelope under her blazer. Tucking it against her side, she locked the panel and turned. A tight smile plastered on her face as she headed for her office. "Good morning, Mom," I said, stepping out. She jumped, her hand flying to her chest where the hidden letter lay. "Jesus, Bianca. You scared me half to death. Should you not be at work? You are going to be late. I am taking a personal hour," I said, my eyes dropping to the bulge in her jacket, expecting anything interesting. "Just bills," she said, her voice rising an octave. "Just the burden of leadership. Bianca, you would not understand. The city is always pestering me about zoning. It is a headache." She scurried into her office and locked the door. I heard the distinct sound of a paper shredder revving to life a few seconds later. She was not just ignoring the foreclosure notices. She was destroying them. She was intercepting the communications intended for the actual owner, ensuring that whoever was behind Hollow Ridge Holdings, if they were even paying attention, remained in the dark about the building's physical state. I needed more than just a suspicion of mail theft. I needed a pattern. That evening, I found Mrs. Alvarez in the laundry room. She was sitting on a folding chair, staring at the washing machine as it churned her floral sheets. Mrs. Alvarez was 72, a retired teacher with a fixed pension and a terrifyingly sharp memory. "Hi, Mrs. Alvarez," I said, setting my basket down. She looked up, her eyes rimmed with red. "Oh, hello, Bianca. Is everything okay?" I asked. She sighed, wringing her hands in her lap. "It is your mother. Dear, I do not mean to speak ill of my family, but I am confused. I paid my rent on the 3rd. I gave her $700 in cash, just like she asked. I always go to the bank on the 2nd, withdraw the money, and put it in her hand, and I pressed, sitting on the dryer next to her. And today she put a note on my door saying I am short. She says I only gave her $500. She says I owe her $200 more plus a late fee. But I know what I gave her. I counted it twice. Did she give you a receipt? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She said the printer was out of ink. Mrs. Alvarez whispered. She said she would slip it under my door later. She never did. Now she says if I do not pay the extra $200 by Friday, she will have to file for eviction. I do not have another $200. Bianca, I have to buy my heart medication. Rage, cold and sharp, tightened my chest. Marlene was gaslighting an elderly woman over $200. "Do not pay her," I said firmly. "Mrs. Alvarez, listen to me. Do not give her another cent until she gives you a receipt for the first $700. Do you have the withdrawal slip from the bank?" "Yes. Right here in my purse. Keep that. It proves you took the money out." "But she is the landlord," Mrs. Alvarez said, terrified. "She can throw me out. She is not the landlord," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Mrs. Alvarez looked at me, confused. What? I lowered my voice. "Nothing. Just do not pay her without a paper trail. Use a check next time. She will not take checks." Mrs. Alvarez said, "She told all of us in the building 6 months ago. She said the bank was changing its policy and checks take too long to clear. She said it has to be cash or Zelle to her personal number." I froze. Every single unit, 8 apartments. If everyone was paying an average of $1,000, Marlene was funneling $8,000 a month into her personal accounts. And she was demanding cash to avoid the paper trail that a check to an LLC would create. I went back to my apartment and started documenting. I walked through the hallways with my phone, taking high-resolution photos of every notice taped to the walls. Notice trash fee increase, pay to manager. Notice no checks accepted, cash or Zelle only. Notice maintenance requests require $50, copay. Every single one of them was signed in the same loopy, aggressive script. Marlene Sterling, building manager. Not the owner, manager. It was a subtle distinction, one she likely used to deflect liability if anyone ever sued. But she used the authority of an owner to collect the cash. The next piece of the puzzle came on Saturday. I was in my kitchen making coffee when a pipe under my sink burst. Water sprayed everywhere, soaking my socks and flooding the cabinet. I called the number on the emergency maintenance list taped inside the pantry. It went straight to voicemail. I called Marlene. No answer. She was likely out getting a manicure with Mrs. Alvarez's rent money. Desperate, I went to the basement and shut off the main valve for my line. Then I called a local plumber I found on Google. A man named Miller showed up an hour later. He was a giant of a man with grease-stained coveralls and a look of permanent skepticism. He took one look at the pipe and snorted. "Corrosion," he said. "The whole building is full of it. This copper is 40 years old. Needs a repipe, not a patch." "Can you fix it?" I asked. "I can patch it," he said. "But I'm not billing the building. I know this place. Briar Hollow." "What do you mean?" Miller stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. "I used to be the contract plumber for this place, Hollow Ridge Holdings. They were decent players for a while. Then about 6 months ago, the check stopped. I sent invoices. Nothing. I called the management line in Delaware. Disconnected. 6 months. The timeline matched exactly. I called the lady who runs the place here." Miller continued. "The one with the hair. Sterling. She told me the owners were restructuring and to keep working, that she would pay me out of petty cash, but then she started shorting me. $10 here, $50 there. I walked. I only came out today because you said you would pay directly. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wet floor." "So the owners vanished 6 months ago?" I asked. Miller shrugged. "Or they gave up. Or they went bust. It happens. Out-of-state investors buy these dumps, realize they are money pits, and just walk away. They stop answering the phone and let the bank take it. Meanwhile, the building rots." He fixed the pipe. I paid him $200 from my own pocket. He gave me a receipt. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. "You know," he said, looking around my kitchen, "if the owners walked, usually the bank steps in fast. Receivership. It is weird that nobody has come to change the locks or inspect the place. Unless what? Unless someone is intercepting the bank's mail," he said, keeping the bank thinking there is still a dialogue happening, delaying the inevitable, buying time. He left. I sat at my kitchen table, the receipt in my hand. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I had created. I had estimated the rent roll based on conversations with neighbors. Unit 1A, me $1,500. Unit 1B, Mrs. Alvarez, $700. Unit 2A, the young couple, $1,200. Unit 2B, Tyler, $0. Unit 3A, the quiet man, $900. Unit 3B, vacant storage. Unit 4A, the nurse, $1,100. Unit 4B, the student, $800. Total monthly revenue collected by Marlene, $6,200. I pulled up the foreclosure notice again. I looked at the amount in arrears listed by the bank, $24,800. I divided $24,800 by $6,200. 4. Exactly 4 months of revenue. The math was so clean it was sickening. Marlene had stopped paying the mortgage, or rather, stopped forwarding the rent to the owners so they could pay the mortgage exactly when the owners stopped communicating with the vendors. She had realized the owners were absent or negligent. Maybe the LLC dissolved. Maybe the principal investor died. Whatever happened, Marlene saw a vacuum, and instead of reporting it, instead of saving the building, she stepped into the void and turned the rent stream into her personal salary. She was not paying the mortgage. She was not paying the taxes. She was not paying the water bill. She was collecting nearly $7,000 a month, my money, Mrs. Alvarez's pension, the nurse's hard-earned cash, and pocketing every dime. The building was a zombie. It was dead legally, but Marlene was propping up the corpse to keep harvesting the organs. And the worst part? She was charging me the most. I was the cash cow. My $1,500 was the anchor of her scheme. I needed to breathe. The apartment felt too small. I walked out into the hallway. The air was stale. I needed to get to the parking lot, to sit in my car and think. As I passed Tyler's door, it swung open. He stepped out, wearing a fresh pair of expensive sneakers, Jordans. I noted, the kind that cost $200. "Hey, B," he said, cheerful. "You look intense. Is everything good?" I stared at his shoes. I thought about Mrs. Alvarez's heart medication. I thought about the corroded pipes. Where did you get the shoes? Tyler, I asked. Gift, he said, grinning. Mom got them for me. Early birthday present. She said we had a good month. A good month. I looked at him. He really did not know. He was stupid. Yes, and lazy. But he was not a criminal mastermind. He was just a parasite feeding on a bigger parasite. It must be nice, I said, my voice tight. To have a good month? Tyler leaned against the wall, looking conspiratorial. Listen, he said, lowering his voice. Do not tell anyone, but things are going to get even better. Mom is working on something huge. Oh, I asked. Yeah. She says the owners are distressed. They want out. She is negotiating a buyout, a short sale or something. She says she is going to pick this place up for pennies on the dollar. My blood ran cold. Pennies on the dollar. I repeated. Exactly. Tyler beamed. That is why she is saving everything right now. She is building a war chest. Once she buys the deed, this whole place is officially ours. Sterling Tower. Baby. She said I can design the logo. He laughed, a hollow, triumphant sound. I realized then the full scope of her plan. It was not just theft. It was a hostile takeover from the inside. She was deliberately letting the building fail, driving it into foreclosure by withholding the rent, driving the value into the dirt so that no one else would want it. She was banking on the fact that when it finally went to auction, it would be so distressed that she could swoop in with the cash she had stolen from us and buy it outright. She was using my rent money to save up for the down payment to buy the building I lived in, so she could become my landlord for real. That is, ambitious. I said. Tyler winked. It is genius. Mom is a shark. You should learn from her. B. Stop working for the man and start owning the game. He walked past me, heading toward the exit, whistling. I stood alone in the hallway. She was a shark. That was true. But sharks have a weakness. They have to keep moving to breathe. And she had made a fatal mistake. She assumed she was the only one in these waters who knew how to hunt. I turned around and walked back to my apartment. I did not go to my car. I went to my closet and pulled out my suit jacket. If she wanted to buy the building, she would have to bid. And to bid, she needed capital. But I knew where her capital came from, and I knew exactly how to cut the supply line. It was time to meet the ghost who owned this building, or at least, the people trying to repossess it. I grabbed my keys. The investigation was over. The war was about to begin. I found Evan Crowley in an office that smelled of lemon polish and old leather, tucked away on the second floor of a converted row house in downtown Ridgehaven. He was not the kind of lawyer you saw on billboards screaming about injury settlements. He was the kind you found when you asked a reference librarian. For someone who understood the granular, boring, violent mechanics of property law. Evan was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad with a fountain pen that scratched aggressively against the paper. So, let me clarify, Evan said, capping his pen. Your mother is acting as a property manager for an LLC that has effectively gone silent. She is collecting rents in cash or personal transfers, manufacturing fees, and seemingly withholding these funds from the property owner, causing the mortgage to go into default. That is correct, I said, and she is using the money to support herself and my brother, while saving to buy the distressed asset she is creating. Evan leaned back in his chair. That is not just unethical, Bianca. That is a clinic in civil fraud. We are looking at conversion of funds, unjust enrichment, and misrepresentation. If the actual owners knew, they could sue her into oblivion. If the state attorney general knew, she could be facing criminal charges for theft by deception. I stared at the diploma on the wall. I did not want her in prison, despite everything, the $1,500, the mold, the favoritism. She was still my mother. I just wanted her to stop. I wanted the boot off my neck. I do not want to destroy her. I said quietly, I just want to live in peace. I want fair rent. I want my brother to grow up. Evan looked at me, his expression softening slightly. you have a few options. Option 1. We send a demand letter. We expose the scheme to the current owners or the bank. They will likely fire her, evict her, and probably evict all of you while they sort out the mess. You lose your home, but you get justice. I shook my head. I have nowhere else to go right now. And Mrs. Alvarez? She would be on the street. Option 2. Evan continued. You stop paying. You put your rent in escrow. You force her to take you to court, where she will have to prove standing to evict you. She cannot, because she is not the owner. It buys you time. But it is messy. It is a war of attrition. He paused, studying me. Or, there is option 3. You said she plans to buy it? Yes. She thinks she can get it for pennies on the dollar once it hits auction. She is gambling, Evan said. Auctions are unpredictable, but if the building is in pre-foreclosure, there is a window right now. The owner's Hollow Ridge holdings are likely desperate. They are looking at a total loss. If someone approached them with a clean offer to take the debt off their hands before the bank seizes it, they might listen. He leaned forward. The question is, Bianca, do you want to be a tenant who wins a lawsuit, or do you want to change the power dynamic entirely? I looked at my hands. I had been saving, even with the extortionate rent. I lived like a monk. I worked overtime at Northgate. I did freelance data entry on weekends. I had my 401k from my old job that I could borrow against. I had excellent credit because I was terrified of debt. I have some money. I said, not enough for a mansion, but maybe enough for a down payment on a crumbling 8-unit apartment building in a bad part of town. Evan nodded slowly. Then we play chess. If you move against her openly, she will retaliate. She will destroy evidence, maybe even damage the building to spite you. You need to be invisible. We need a shield, he said. Pulling a fresh sheet of paper, we form an LLC, something generic. We approach the owners through a broker. We make an offer based on the debt, not the market value. What should we call it? I asked. He tapped the pen. Not your name. Nothing that links to Sterling. Sterling Harbor Properties, I said. He raised an eyebrow. It is a joke, I explained. A harbor is safe. Sterling is... Well, I am taking the name back. Evan smiled. Sterling Harbor Properties, LLC. It is. The next week was a blur of silent activity. I lived a double life. By day, I was the dutiful daughter, nodding when Marlene lectured me about conserving water and ignoring Tyler when he smirked at me from his new gaming chair. By night, I was building a case file that would strangle their little empire. I printed bank statements highlighting every transfer to Marlene. I downloaded the security footage from my hallway camera showing her cash transactions with Mrs. Alvarez. I saved the text messages where she demanded Zelle only. I compiled a dossier of the fake fee notices. I was not just buying a building, I was buying insurance. If she tried to fight me after the sale, I would have enough evidence to bury her in court for a decade. But first, I had to buy it. Evan introduced me to a commercial broker named Dana Klein. Dana was a woman who looked like she subsisted entirely on espresso and ambition. We met in a diner 3 towns over to ensure Marlene would not see us. So, this is the dump, Dana asked, sliding a printout of Briar Hollow across the table. That is my home, I said defensively, then sighed. Yes, that is the dump. Dana tapped a manicured fingernail on the photo. It is a mess, but the bones are good. Brick structure, separate metering for electricity. The numbers work if you get it cheap. The problem is the seller. Have you reached them? I asked. I got a hold of the managing partner's representative. Dana said, a guy in Delaware. He is tired. He sounds defeated. He admitted they haven't seen a dime in net revenue for 6 months. He thinks the neighborhood has gone to hell. He thinks the neighborhood is the problem, I asked. He thinks the tenants are the problem, Dana corrected. He told me the property manager your mother reports that the tenants are all deadbeats. She sends him reports saying units are vacant when they are full. She sends him photos of damage that does not exist to justify withholding revenue for repairs. My jaw tightened. She was poisoning the well. She was slandering us to lower the value. So he wants to sell. He wants out, Dana confirmed. He is ready to let it go for the balance of the mortgage plus a small walk-away fee. It is a fire sale. I did the mental math. It was doable, tight, terrifyingly tight, but doable. Make the offer. I said. Dana hesitated. There is one thing. He mentioned that the property manager has expressed interest in buying. She has been lowballing him for months, offering him insultingly small amounts of cash. He hates her. He hates her, I asked. He thinks she is incompetent because the building is failing. Dana said. But he also thinks she is the only one stupid enough to buy a failing building. He was about to cave and sell to her just to be done with it. I felt a cold sweat prickle my hairline. I was close. Too close. If I had waited another week, Marlene might have closed the deal. Submit the offer from Sterling Harbor Properties, I said. Tell him we are a local investment group. Tell him we can close in 30 days. No contingencies. Dana nodded. I will draft it tonight. But Bianca, you need to know something. She leaned in, her voice dropping. When I spoke to him, he said something odd. He said he would rather sell to a stranger for less money than to that woman. He said, I do not know what game she is playing, but I feel like I am being robbed in slow motion. He knows, I whispered. He suspects, Dana said, but he is too far away and too tired to prove it. He just wants to wash his hands of it. But if he finds out Sterling Harbor is connected to her, if he sees the name Sterling, he won't. I said, the LLC is registered to a registered agent. My name does not appear on the offer letter. I hope not, Dana said grimly, because he made it very clear the current owner does not want to sell to the person who ruined his investment. He does not want to sell to the woman who has been skimming off the top. I sat back in the booth. The irony was perfect. Marlene's greed had not only destroyed the building's finances, it had destroyed her own chance of acquiring it. She had played the villain so well that the victim refused to do business with her. Send the offer. I said again. I drove home that night with my heart in my throat. I pulled into the dark parking lot of Briar Hollow. The street lamp was flickering. A pile of trash sat near the dumpster, uncollected because Marlene hadn't paid the waste management company. I looked up at the second floor. Tyler's window was glowing blue from his screens. My mother's window was dark. They were sleeping in a building they thought they owned by right of conquest. They thought they were the smartest people in the room. I touched the folder on the passenger seat. I was not just the tenant in 1A anymore. I was the bidder. I walked into the building, past the peeling paint and the smell of mildew. I unlocked my door and stepped into my $1,500 box. I stripped off my work clothes and stood in the shower, letting the hot water run until it turned cold. I needed to wash off the fear. Tomorrow, the offer would land on a desk in Delaware. Tomorrow, the clock will start ticking. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling. I could hear Tyler walking around upstairs. Thump, 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 enjoy the floor. Tyler, I thought, because the ground is about to shift. The war of attrition moved from the shadows into the light on a Tuesday evening, 3 days after Dana submitted our offer to the owners in Delaware. I walked into my apartment to find Marlene sitting at my small dining table. She had used her master key to let herself in. A violation of privacy she considered a maternal perk. She did not look up when I entered. She was tapping a calculator. Her face pinched in a mask of calculated stress. We need to talk about the rent, she said, her voice flat. I dropped my keys in the bowl, my pulse immediately spiking. The offer was out there. Every interaction now felt like walking on a minefield. I had to play the part of the struggling tenant, not the prospective buyer. I paid you first, I said. $1,500. Cash. That was the old rate, Marlene said, finally looking at me. Her eyes were cold, devoid of the usual performative warmth. The market has shifted. Bianca, property taxes are up. Maintenance costs are skyrocketing. Starting next month, the rate is $1,800. I stared at her. $1,800 for a ground floor unit with water stains on the ceiling and a view of the dumpster. It was a robbery. It was also a desperate clawing for cash because she sensed the walls closing in. $1,800. I repeated, Mom, That is a 20% increase. You cannot just demand that without notice. I just gave you notice, she snapped. I need a new lease, I said, keeping my voice steady. If you are raising the rent, I want a written contract. I want a ledger of my payments for the last 6 months, and I want the utility split defined in writing. Marlene stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. You want a ledger, she spat. You are living here because I allow it. You are living here because family takes care of family, and now you want to bring lawyers and paperwork into my kitchen. It is my kitchen, I said quietly, and I am paying more than anyone else in this building. Because you can afford it, she yelled. You have a corporate job. You have benefits. Look at your brother. He is struggling. He is trying to build something. You should be happy to contribute to the legacy. Legacy. The word hung in the air. Toxic and heavy. Her legacy was a Ponzi scheme built on my paycheck. I am not paying $1,800 without a contract. I said, Then you can get out, she said. Pay it or leave. You have until the end of the week to decide. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame on the wall tilted. The escalation did not stop there. 2 nights later, Tyler decided that finding himself required a baseline that shook the foundation of the building. It was 11 at night on a Thursday. My ceiling was vibrating. I could hear shouting, the crash of glass, and the heavy thud of bodies bumping against walls. Tyler was hosting a networking event for his streaming channel. I put on my robe and walked out into the hallway. The door to 2B was open. Smoke vape and something herbal drifted out. 3 young men I did not know were sitting on the stairs, drinking beer. One of them had spilled a dark liquid all over the beige carpet of the landing. Tyler, I shouted over the music. He appeared in the doorway, holding a red plastic cup, his eyes glassy. Chill. B, he slurred. We are brainstorming. You are waking the whole building, I said. And your friends ruined the carpet. Marlene appeared from her office downstairs. I thought she would finally discipline him. I thought she would see the chaos and act like a manager. Instead, she looked at me. Bianca, stop harassing him, she hissed, hurrying up the stairs. He has guests. Why are you always so jealous of his social life? Jealous? I pointed to the beer stain. Mom, look at the floor. Look at the mess. It is just a little spill, she said, stepping over it to pat Tyler on the arm. Go back inside. Honey, I will deal with your sister. She is just tired. Tyler smirked at me a look of pure, unadulterated entitlement and closed the door. Marlene turned on me, her face twisting. You are embarrassing him, she whispered furiously. These are important contacts. You need to learn to be supportive. If you cannot handle a little noise, maybe you really do not belong here. I went back to my apartment, shaking with rage. I did not sleep. The consequences arrived the next morning. I was getting ready for work when a heavy knock pounded on the front door of the building. Not my door, the main entrance. I looked out the peephole. A man in a windbreaker with a City of Ridgehaven ID badge was standing there, looking impatient. Behind him was a police officer. I opened my door a crack. Marlene was already there, clutching her robe, looking pale. Can I help you? She asked, her voice trembling. Marlene Sterling, the inspector, asked. We received multiple complaints last night regarding noise, potential capacity violations, and sanitation issues in the common areas. We need to inspect the premises. Marlene froze. She knew the building was not up to code. She knew about the unpermitted work she had done in Tyler's unit. She knew the fire extinguishers were expired. She looked around wildly and saw me standing in my doorway, dressed in my office blazer. Bianca, she cried out, grabbing my arm and pulling me into the hallway. Bianca, you talk to them. You know the legal talk. Handle this. She tried to push me toward the inspector, using me as a human shield against her own incompetence. I planted my feet. No, I said. Marlene's eyes widened. What, I am the tenant in 1A. I said to the inspector, ignoring my mother. The manager is Ms. Sterling. She handles all building operations. I stepped back and closed my door. Through the wood, I heard Marlene stammering. The inspector's stern voice demanding access to the basement. and the eventual citation being written. When I came out 10 minutes later to leave for work, Marlene was standing in the lobby holding a yellow violation ticket. She looked at me with pure hatred. "You let them write this," she whispered. "You could have charmed them. You could have fixed it." I walked past her. "It is not my building, Marlene. Not yet." That afternoon, I received an email from the power company. I had set up an alert for unusual usage after the bill had spiked the previous month. The email stated that my usage for the current billing cycle was 300% above the average for a single-occupant unit. I sat at my desk at Northgate, staring at the graph. The spikes in usage coincided exactly with the times Tyler was home. I called the power company. I asked a specific question about the meter configuration for Briar Hollow. The representative hesitated. "Ma'am, looking at the schematics from the last service call, it appears there is a subpanel bridging Unit 1A and Unit 2B. It looks like the load is being shared." Shared. Marlene had not just bought Tyler an air conditioner. She had wired it to my meter. I was paying for his comfort. I was paying for his gaming rig. I was paying for the lights he left on 24 hours a day. I felt sick. It was not the money. Though the money hurt, it was the predation. She was cannibalizing me to feed him. I left work early. I could not go back to that apartment. I could not sleep under that roof, knowing that every time Tyler turned on a switch, he was reaching into my pocket. I drove to Briar Hollow one last time. I parked down the street. I went in, packed a suitcase with my essentials, grabbed my box of documents, and locked the door. As I was walking to my car, my phone buzzed. "Family dinner, 6 p.m. Do not be late." It was a command from Marlene. I considered ignoring it, but I needed to look her in the eye one more time. I needed to see the depth of the delusion before I shattered it. I drove to my aunt's house, where the dinner was being held. It was a neutral ground, or so I thought. When I walked in, the atmosphere was suffocating. My aunt, uncle, and 2 cousins were there. Sitting in the living room, Marlene was in the center, wiping away a tear. Tyler was eating a shrimp cocktail, looking bored. "Bianca is here," Marlene said, her voice trembling with staged martyrdom. Finally, I stood by the door. "What is this?" Marlene stood up. "We were just discussing your attitude. I told your aunt how you refused to help the inspector, how you refused to pay the market rate rent, how you have been hostile to your brother who is going through such a fragile time." My aunt looked at me with disapproval. "Bianca, your mother works so hard. You are the one with the good job. Why are you making this so difficult?" I looked at them. They saw a successful, cold daughter bullying a sacrificing mother. They did not see the thief. "I am not making it difficult," I said. "I am asking for fairness." "Fairness?" Marlene laughed. A harsh, jagged sound. "Do you want fairness? Fine. Here is fairness. Since you moved out today, yes. I saw you with your suitcase. You are officially in breach of our verbal agreement. You owe me the remainder of the month plus the $1,800 for next month as a penalty. I am not paying you another dime." I said, "And by the way, Mom, you might want to call an electrician. I think there is a serious issue with the wiring between my unit and Tyler's. It seems my meter is spinning for 2 apartments." Marlene went white. Tyler stopped chewing. "You are delusional." Marlene stammered. I looked at my aunt. "Ask her for the receipts. Aunt Jenna. Ask her why the building is in foreclosure." Marlene screamed. "Stop it." She marched up to me, her face inches from mine. "You are jealous. You have always been jealous that Tyler has a spark, and you are just a worker. You are a cog. Bianca, you are boring and you are stingy, and you are trying to destroy this family because you cannot stand that we are happy without your money." She pointed to the door. "Get out. You are done at Briar Hollow. I am filing for eviction tomorrow. And do not think you are getting your security deposit back. That is gone." I looked at Tyler. He would not meet my eyes. He was checking his phone. I looked at Marlene. "Okay," I said. I turned and walked out. I did not slam the door. I closed it gently. I drove to a budget extended stay hotel on the edge of town. The room smelled of bleach and desperation. But it was mine. It had its own meter. It had silence. I sat on the bed and opened my laptop. I had an email from Evan Crowley. Subject update. Sterling Harbor Properties Bianca. Good news. The seller has accepted the offer. They want to expedite closing to avoid the foreclosure hit on their record. We are scheduled to sign the final deed transfer next Thursday. Next Thursday. My phone buzzed again. A text from Marlene. Marlene, I am filing the eviction papers tomorrow morning. You have 3 days to remove your trash from my building. Don't test me. I will ruin your credit. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Next Thursday was the first of the month. Marlene had scheduled a mandatory tenant meeting for that evening to announce the rent hikes and her new management policies. She had sent the flyer to everyone earlier that day. She wanted to assemble her subjects and tighten the screws. She was going to stand in the lobby of Briar Hollow and declare herself the queen. Right at the moment, I would become the owner. I typed a reply to Evan. Thursday is perfect. Prepare the deed. Then I looked at Marlene's text. I will ruin your credit. I lay back on the stiff hotel pillows. You can try. Mom, I whispered to the empty room, but you cannot evict the landlord. The fluorescent lights of Evan Crowley's office hummed with a low, irritating buzz that seemed to match the frequency of my anxiety. On the mahogany desk between us lay a stack of documents that dismantled the last shred of sympathy I might have held for my mother. Evan adjusted his glasses and slid a thick sheaf of papers toward me. These were not the internal building documents I had expected. These were tax records and court filings from the Court of Common Pleas. We pulled the full liability report on Hollow Ridge Holdings, Evan said, his voice devoid of emotion, and we cross-referenced it with Marlene's personal financial profile, Bianca. The building is not just in foreclosure. It is also 2 years behind on property taxes. The city has a lien on it. I picked up the paper. The number at the bottom was staggering, $18,000 in unpaid municipal taxes. But that is not the worst part. Evan continued. We managed to get a brief conference call with the representative for the current ownership group, a man named Mr. Vance. He is the one technically selling the building to us. What did he say? I asked. Evan sighed. He said they stopped receiving consistent rent rolls 14 months ago. Marlene told them that the neighborhood had collapsed. She sent them fabricated police reports claiming the building was in a high crime zone and that tenants were fleeing. She told them that out of 8 units, only 2 were occupied, and those tenants were refusing to pay due to the condition of the property. I felt the blood drain from my face. She lied to them. I whispered. She told them the building was empty so she could keep the money from the full building. Exactly. Evan said. She ghosted the owners on the revenue, claiming hardship, while simultaneously terrorizing the tenants for every single cent. She played the middleman, telling the owners the tenants were deadbeats, and telling the tenants the owners were greedy tyrants. She created a fog of war and looted the village in the confusion. I sat back, trying to process the sheer scale of the deception. It was not just skimming, it was a complete fabrication of reality. But why, I asked? Why let it get this bad if the bank takes it? She loses her job. She loses her home. Evan pulled another document from his folder. This one was a personal credit report. It was not legal for me to see it under normal circumstances, but Evan had found public record judgments against her name that painted the picture clearly enough. She has 3 credit cards in collections, Evan said, and a personal loan from a high-interest predatory lender that she took out 2 years ago. The interest rate is 28%. I looked at the dates. The loan originated right around the time Tyler quit his last job, a barista gig he held for 3 weeks before quitting because the manager did not respect his creative energy. She is not saving the money to buy the building. I realized, the truth hitting me like a physical blow. She is drowning. She is taking my rent, Mrs. Alvarez's pension, and everyone else's money just to service the interest on her own bad debts. And to fund Tyler, Evan added. I nodded. The picture was complete. The big deal she bragged to Tyler about, the fantasy that she would buy the building for pennies on the dollar, was just that, a fantasy. She had no war chest. She had no capital. She was likely telling Tyler she was saving up to buy the place just to keep him pacified, to make him think there was a future where he was the heir to a real estate empire. She was robbing Peter to pay Paul. when Paul came looking for his money. She robbed me. I need to see the proxy. I said, I need to hear it from the seller. Evan arranged a brief video call with Mr. Vance later that afternoon. The man looked exhausted, sitting in a generic office in Delaware with dark circles under his eyes. Ms. Sterling, Vance said, his voice tight. Your broker says you are ready to close quickly. I will be honest. We just want to be rid of this asset. It has been a nightmare. I kept my face neutral. I understand. The management has been challenging, Vance scoffed. The woman is incompetent. She sends us handwritten ledgers. She claims the roof collapsed last winter to justify withholding $5,000. But when we sent a contractor to check, she refused him entry. We should have fired her a year ago. But we are an investment holding firm. We do not have the staff to manage a small building in Pennsylvania. We just let it slide until the bank got involved. I swallowed hard. Did she ever mention a tenant named Bianca? Vance paused, looking at his notes. Bianca, no. According to her last report, Unit 1A has been vacant for 8 months due to a mold infestation she is supposedly treating. I closed my eyes. I had been paying $1,500 a month to live in a vacant unit. I did not exist. To the owners, I was a ghost. To my mother, I was an ATM. Thank you. Mr. Vance, I said, we will correct the management issues. After the call, I drove to the extended stay hotel, but I could not go inside. I was restless. I needed to see the damage up close. I drove to a convenience store near Briar Hollow. I parked in the back, watching the entrance. I did not have to wait long. Tyler walked in. He was wearing the new sneakers Marlene had bought him. He walked with a swagger that was entirely unearned, the walk of a man who believed the world was a buffet laid out for his personal amusement. I waited until he came out, carrying a plastic bag. I stepped out of my car. Tyler. He jumped, nearly dropping his bag. B. What are you doing here, stalking us? I looked at the bag. Through the thin white plastic, I could see 2 large cans of energy drinks, a bag of beef jerky, and a stack of scratch-off lottery tickets. Finding yourself looks expensive, I said. Tyler rolled his eyes. Oh, give it a rest. Mom told me you are staying in some dump hotel. She said you will be back begging for your room in a week once you realize how expensive the real world is. The real world, I repeated. Tyler, do you know who pays for your apartment? Mom does, he said defensively. She owns the place, or she basically does. She does not own anything, I said, stepping closer. She is broke, Tyler. She has been stealing the rent money to pay off credit cards she used to buy you things. The building is in foreclosure because she stopped paying the mortgage to buy you those shoes. Tyler laughed. It was a nervous, dismissive sound. You are crazy. Mom has a plan. She is going to buy the deed next month. She showed me the account. It has like $50,000 in it. I froze. $50,000. If she had $50,000, why was she letting the building rot? Then it hit me. The high-interest loan. She probably took out another one. Or maybe she had actually hoarded some of the stolen cash in a separate account, intending to use it for the auction, ignoring the fact that the debt on the building was 5 times that amount. It was a delusion. She thought $50,000 could buy $1 million asset because she had convinced herself the world worked on her terms. She is lying to you, I said, and you are letting her because it is easier than getting a job. Tyler's face darkened. I have a job. I am building a brand. You are just jealous because you are a corporate drone. You wake up, you go to a cubicle, you die. I am going to be somebody. Mom sees that. She supports the vision. You just support the system. He brushed past me, shouldering me aside. I watched him walk away, popping the tab on his energy drink. He was 28, but in his mind, he was still 12. Marlene had stunted him. She had crippled him with kindness, turning him into a man-child who believed that finding himself was a valid career path funded by his sister's labor. I got back in my car. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mrs. Alvarez. Bianca, are you okay? Your mother was here today. She told us the new owner is coming next week to evict everyone, but she is fighting to save us. She asked for a legal defense fund contribution, $50 from each unit. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. She was monetizing her own failure. She was telling the tenants that a bad new owner was coming, which was actually me, and collecting money to fight me. I drove to the park down the street from the apartment. I texted Mrs. Alvarez to meet me there. She came 10 minutes later. Clutching her purse, 2 other tenants were with her, the nurse from 4A, a tired woman named Sarah, and the young guy from 2A. Marcus, Mrs. Alvarez, I said, looking at the small group. Do not give her $50. She says if we do not pay, the new owner will throw us out, Sarah said, looking terrified. She said the new owner is a corporation that hates rent control. I took a breath. I could not tell them yet. Not until the ink was dry on the deed. She is lying, I said. I cannot say how I know. But I know. The new owner is not going to evict anyone who pays rent. How do you know? Marcus asked. Suspicious. You moved out. Did you make a deal with them? I looked at Marcus. He was a good guy. He worked 2 jobs. Marlene had charged him a bicycle storage fee of $40 a month for chaining his bike to the railing outside. I am working on it, I said, but I need you to trust me. Keep your money. And Sarah. Marcus. Did she charge you for the hallway lights last month? Marcus nodded. $30. Said energy costs went up. And you? Sarah, parking lot security fee. Sarah said, $20. Even though the light is broken, I pulled out a notepad. Write it down, I said. Write down every fee, every cash payment, every time she refuses to give a receipt. Sign it and date it. What is this for, Mrs. Alvarez asked. It is for the transition. I lied. To prove to the new owners that you paid. If you have this record, they cannot claim you are in arrears. They spent 20 minutes writing out their statements. The list of grievances was long. Unauthorized entry, refusal to fix heat, threats of eviction for minor infractions. As I held the stack of handwritten testimonies, I felt a heavy weight settle in my stomach. Evan had warned me. If you buy this building, Bianca, you are not just buying bricks. You are buying a crime scene. You will be the landlord. These people will look to you to fix years of neglect. You will have to be the one to tell Mrs. Alvarez the roof needs to be replaced, and maybe the rent has to go up eventually to pay for it. You will be the villain unless you are very, very careful. I was not doing this for profit. I know that now. If I wanted profit, I would have kept my savings in an index fund. I was doing this because no one else would stop her. The bank would just foreclose and sell to a developer who would bulldoze the place. Marlene would just move to a new scam. Tyler would never learn. I was the only one standing between the wrecking ball and these families. My phone rang. It was Dana, the broker. Her voice was sharp, urgent. Bianca, we have a problem. What is it? I asked, my heart skipping a beat. Mr. Vance just called me. They received another inquiry, a cash offer from a flipper in New Jersey. I felt cold. Is it higher than ours? Dana hesitated. It is $10,000 lower, but the guy is promising to close in 24 hours. He is waiving the inspection period entirely. Vance is spooked. He wants to be done. He told me if we cannot wire the full funds and sign the closing documents within 48 hours, he is going with the Jersey guy. 48 hours. I looked at the bank app on my phone. My funds were ready, but the transfer limits were tricky. I had to go to the branch in person to authorize a wire of that size, and tomorrow was a bank holiday, Veterans Day. I cannot get to the bank tomorrow. I said, panic rising. They are closed. Then you have to do it today. Dana said, you have until 5 o'clock to initiate the wire. If the money is not in escrow by Friday morning, the deal is dead. And Bianca, what Vance mentioned that the property manager, your mother, has been calling his office all day, she is trying to block the sale. She told him she has found a structural defect that makes the building unsellable. She is trying to sabotage the deal so she can buy more time to scrape her own money together. She was burning the house down to keep anyone else from living in it. I checked my watch. It was 3:30. The bank closed at 5. I have to go. I told Dana, Send the wire instructions to my secure email. I hung up and looked at Mrs. Alvarez, Sarah, and Marcus. Go home. I told them. Do not pay her. Do not sign anything she gives you. Just wait. Wait for what Mrs. Alvarez asked. Wait for the rent to stop being a ransom. I said. I ran to my car. I had 90 minutes to get across town, verify my identity, and wire the entirety of my life savings into an escrow account for a building that was technically falling apart. As I pulled onto the highway, rain started to fall, blurring the world into streaks of gray and red. If I missed this window, Marlene won. She would keep the building in limbo, keep bleeding the tenants, and eventually drag Tyler down with her into total ruin. I pressed the accelerator. I was not just buying a building, I was buying a severance package for my family. I arrived at the bank with 7 minutes to spare. The branch manager, a woman named Mrs. Gable, who knew me from years of making boring, disciplined deposits, looked at me with concern. I was soaked from the rain and shaking slightly, clutching a folder that contained my entire financial life. "Bianca," she said, ushering me into her cubicle. "You want to wire?" "Everything." "Almost everything," I corrected, sitting down. "The down payment is $60,000. The rest is for the closing costs and the emergency repair fund. I am required to ask." "Mrs. Gable said, typing rapidly, is this under duress? Has anyone threatened you? I thought of Marlene's text message. I will ruin your credit." "No," I said, "this is for an acquisition. Commercial real estate." She processed the wire. I watched the numbers on the screen, the result of 5 years of missed vacations, packed lunches, and overtime shifts vanish into the digital ether. My account balance dropped to 3 figures. I felt lightheaded. There was no safety net now. I was all in. The next 48 hours were a blur of adrenaline and paperwork. I took 2 sick days from Northgate, telling my boss I had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. I was performing surgery on my family tree. Evan Crowley was a machine. He drafted an operating agreement for Sterling Harbor Properties, LLC, that was impenetrable. "Clause 4, Section B," he explained, pointing to a paragraph dense with legalese. "This is the non-disclosure provision. The seller agrees not to reveal the identity of the LLC's members until after the deed is recorded. This prevents Marlene from finding out you are the buyer until it is too late for her to sabotage the closing." "Good," I said. "She has eyes everywhere. She has ears, too." Evan warned, "Be careful." The hardest part was the negotiation with the seller regarding the building's condition, because Marlene had reported structural defects to scare off other buyers. The seller, Mr. Vance, was demanding I sign a waiver acknowledging I was buying a potential ruin. "I can't sign this blind." I told Evan, "If the foundation is actually cracked, I am bankrupt. We need an inspection." Evan said, "We don't have time." I countered, "The Jersey flipper is waiting." I made a risky call. I called Miller, the plumber who had fixed my sink. "Miller," I said, "I need to know. Is the building sinking? Is the roof about to cave in?" Miller laughed. "The roof needs patches." "Yeah. But the structure? It is solid brick, lady, built in the 70s. The only defect is the manager who won't pay for gutter cleaning. The foundation is fine." I trusted him. I signed the waiver. But Mr. Vance had one more demand. He wanted a capital improvement plan. He wanted to know that the new owner, me, was not a slumlord who would let the city fines pile up, which would legally blow back on the previous owner during the transition period. I sat in my hotel room and drafted the plan. I listed the immediate repairs: replace all smoke detectors currently expired, install new handrails in the stairwell currently loose, repipe the main water line currently corroded, professional management audit. That last one was for Marlene. I sent the plan to Vance. He approved it within an hour. He didn't care about the details. He just wanted to see that someone responsible was taking the wheel. Then came the rent roll analysis. Evan sent me the official documents the seller had on file. I sat on the floor of my hotel room, cross-referencing the official rent roll with my own notebook of what tenants actually paid. Official roll: Submitted by Marlene to owner Unit 1A, me vacant, under repair. Unit 1B. Mrs. Alvarez, $500. Section 8 subsidy only. Unit 2B. Tyler Building Superintendent, rent-free. My hands shook. She had listed Tyler as the superintendent. I Googled the legal requirements for a resident superintendent in Pennsylvania. It required a contract, specific duties, and a salary or rent credit that had to be reported as taxable income. Tyler had never reported a dime, and Marlene had certainly never issued him a W-2. More importantly, she was skimming the difference from Mrs. Alvarez. Mrs. Alvarez paid $700. The owner only saw $500. Marlene was pocketing $200 cash every month from a widow, likely claiming it was a processing fee. And the building manager contract itself, I found it in the digital data room Evan had access to. It was a single page, signed 5 years ago. Marlene Sterling is authorized to collect rents and coordinate repairs. She is not authorized to levy fines, surcharges, or modify lease terms without written consent from the owner. Every late fee, every trash fee, every market adjustment, it was all unauthorized. It was theft by deception. I printed the contract. This was the smoking gun. She wasn't a landlord. She was a rogue agent. The closing was set for Thursday at 10:00 a.m. at the title company's office, Wednesday night, the eve of the closing. My phone rang. It was Marlene. I debated not answering. I was exhausted. My eyes burned from reading the fine print, but I needed to maintain the illusion one last time. "Hello," I answered, keeping my voice dull. "Bianca," Marlene said. Her voice was brisk, commanding. "We are having a family meeting tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, at the apartment. I cannot come." I said, "I have work. You will come." She snapped. "Tyler is upset. He feels you abandoned him, and I need to discuss the eviction timeline. If you come and apologize, and maybe agree to pay the back rent you owe, I might consider letting you stay on a probationary basis." I closed my eyes. She was still trying to squeeze me. Even now, when she had kicked me out, she wanted me back just so she could extract more cash. She probably realized that without my $1,500, her house of cards was collapsing faster than she anticipated. "Probationary basis," I repeated. "Yes, but the rent will be $1,800, and you will apologize to your brother for the scene you caused with the inspector." I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said. "I will be there tomorrow." "Good," Marlene said, her tone softening into smug satisfaction. "I knew you would come to your senses. You are not built for the rough world. Bianca, you need a family." She hung up. I stared at the phone. "You are not built for the rough world." She was right. I wasn't built for her world, a world of lies and exploitation. I was building a new one. I packed my bag for the next day. I put on my best suit, a charcoal gray blazer and tailored trousers. I packed the pen I had received when I graduated college. I went to sleep, but I dreamed of keys, thousands of keys, raining down on me. Thursday morning, the sky was clear, a crisp autumn blue. I drove to the title company. Evan was already there, looking fresh and sharp. Dana was there too, drinking a triple espresso. "Ready?" Evan asked. I nodded. We went into a conference room. The seller, Mr. Vance, was not there in person. He had signed remotely. The title agent, a woman named Carol, pushed a stack of documents toward me. "Sign here, initial here, sign here, the HUD-1 settlement statement, the promissory note, the deed transfer." I signed my name. Bianca Sterling. Member, Sterling. Harbor Properties. LLC. It took an hour. My hands are cramped. Finally. Carol stamped the last document. "Congratulations," she said, sliding a set of heavy brass keys across the table. "You own the building." I picked up the keys. They were cold and heavy. They were real. Evan shook my hand. "The deed will be recorded electronically by noon. Once it hits the public record, it is official. Marlene will not know until you tell her, or until she tries to log into the owner portal and finds herself locked out." I checked my watch. It was 11:15 a.m. I have a meeting with her at 7. I said, "Perfect timing." Evan said, "Do you want me there?" "No." I said, "This is something I have to do myself, but keep your phone on." I walked out of the office. The sun hit my face. I felt different. The air tasted cleaner. I walked to my car. I had 8 hours until the meeting. 8 hours to prepare my opening statement. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. I looked at the screen. My heart skipped a beat. "Tyler, I saw you at the bank yesterday. Mom thinks you were withdrawing cash to pay her back, but I saw you go into the loan officer's office. I know you are up to something. B, don't make it worse for yourself." He had seen me. I stared at the message. He didn't know what I was doing, but he knew I was moving pieces on the board. I didn't reply. I started the car. Let him think I was getting a loan to pay them. Let him think I was capitulating. It would make the surprise that much sweeter. I drove toward Briar Hollow. I parked 2 blocks away. As I had for the last week, I walked toward the building. I saw the familiar peeling paint, the overflowing dumpster, the dead bush by the entrance. Tonight, that would change. I touched the brass keys in my pocket. I wasn't visiting anymore. I was inspecting my property. The walk from my car to the front door of Briar Hollow felt like walking into a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. But the judge had no idea the jury was rigged. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of burning leaves and the exhaust from the highway. I touched the cold brass keys in my blazer pocket one last time. They were my anchor. They were the only thing keeping me from turning around and driving until the gas tank ran dry. I climbed the stairs to the second floor. I could hear voices drifting through the thin door of Unit 2B. Marlene had convened a tribunal. She had not just invited Tyler, she had called in reinforcements. I knocked. The door swung open instantly, as if Marlene had been standing right behind it, waiting to pounce. She was wearing a pearl necklace and a sweater set I recognized from a catalog she couldn't afford. Her face was composed into a mask of tragic disappointment. "You are late," she said, stepping aside. "We said 7. It is 7:05. I walked inside. The apartment, Tyler's apartment, was cleaner than I had ever seen it. The gaming consoles were hidden. The pizza boxes were gone. In the living room, sitting on the faux leather sofa like jurors, were my Aunt Jenna and Uncle Rick. Jenna was Marlene's younger sister, a woman who believed that keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth. Rick was a man who successfully avoided conflict by staring at the floor. "Bianca," Aunt Jenna cooed, patting the cushion next to her. "Come sit. We are just so worried about you." I did not sit next to her. I took the wooden chair from the dining table and placed it in the center of the room. Facing them, I sat down, keeping my back straight, my hands folded in my lap. I placed the thick envelope containing the deed transfer documents on the floor beside my feet. "Where is Tyler?" I asked. "He is in the kitchen," Marlene said, taking her seat in the armchair that served as the throne of this little kingdom. "He is making tea. He is trying to be a good host, despite how you have treated him." Tyler emerged, carrying a tray with unmatched mugs. He wouldn't look at me. He set the tray down on the coffee table and slouched onto the arm of the sofa, positioning himself safely behind his mother. "Let us begin," Marlene said, clasping her hands. "Bianca, we are all family here. We love you, but tough love is necessary when someone loses their way." I looked at Uncle Rick. He was studying the pattern on the rug with intense fascination. "I have not lost my way." "Marlene," I said calmly, "I moved out because you threatened to evict me." "I threatened to evict you because you became toxic," Marlene corrected sharply. "You refused to pay the market rate. You brought the city inspectors to our door. You tried to humiliate your brother. That is not how Sterling behaves." She reached under a magazine on the coffee table and pulled out a stapled document. It was printed on standard copy paper, the ink slightly smeared. "However," she continued, her voice taking on a magnanimous tone, "I am willing to offer you a path back to redemption. I have drafted an agreement. If you sign this, you can move back into Unit 1A. You will pay the new rate, you will apologize to the family, and we will put this ugly chapter behind us." She slid the paper across the table toward me. I picked it up. It was titled Lease Reinstatement and Behavioral Contract. I scanned the terms. It was a manifesto of control. 1. Tenant agrees to pay a monthly rental fee of $1,800, due on the 1st. 2. Tenant agrees to pay a one-time reinstatement fee of $500. 3. Tenant agrees to pay retroactive late fees for the emotional distress caused to management $300. 4. Tenant agrees to waive all rights to privacy regarding unit inspections. 5. Tenant acknowledges that Tyler Sterling acts as senior building supervisor and will treat him with according respect. I almost laughed at the last point. Senior building supervisor. I looked up at her. The total amount you want me to write a check for tonight is $2,600. It is a small price for stability. Aunt Jenna chimed in. Bianca, honey, your mother is being very generous. Rent is so high everywhere else, and you know how hard she works to keep this building. I looked at Jenna. Does she work hard to keep it? Aunt Jenna. Or does she work hard to keep the truth from you? Marlene's eyes narrowed. Watch your tone. I placed the paper back on the table. I will not sign this, I said. Marlene sighed. A theatrical exhale that shook her shoulders. See? She is impossible. I try to help her, and she spits in my face. I am not spitting. I said, I am auditing. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I set it on the table. Screen up. I opened the voice memo app and pressed the big red record button. What are you doing? Tyler asked, sitting up straighter. I am recording this meeting. I said, Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state for audio recording in private spaces, so I am formally asking for your consent. If you have nothing to hide, it should not be a problem. Do you consent? Turn that off. Marlene snapped. This is a family meeting, not a deposition. If we are discussing money, contracts, and eviction, it is business. I said, and in business, we keep records. You want me to pay $2,600? Fine. I have one condition. I leaned forward. Show me the ledger. I said. Marlene blinked. What the general ledger for the building? I said clearly. Show me the bank account where my rent money goes. Show me the proof that the $1,500 I have been paying every month for 6 months was deposited into the Hollow Ridge Holdings operating account. Show me the payments to the water company. Show me the mortgage payments. The room went dead silent. Uncle Rick finally looked up, his brow furrowed. Marlene's face went from pale to a mottled red. How dare you, she hissed. You think you can come in here with your corporate attitude and demand my finances? I am your mother, I wiped your nose, I paid for your braces. That is ancient history. I said, I am talking about last month. I am talking about Mrs. Alvarez's rent. I am talking about the fact that this building is in foreclosure. Marlene. Aunt Jenna gasped. Foreclosure? Marlene? Is that true? Marlene stood up, her fists clenching at her sides. It is a clerical error. The bank made a mistake. I am handling it. I have a lawyer working on it right now. You do not have a lawyer, I said. You have a pile of unopened letters from the bank that you shredded. I looked at Aunt Jenna. She is charging me $1,800 because she needs to pay the interest on her personal credit cards. She is not paying the building's mortgage. She is using me, Mrs. Alvarez, and everyone else to fund a lifestyle she cannot afford. That is a lie. Marlene screamed. She looked frantically at her sister. Jenna, do not listen to her. She is mentally unstable. She lost her job in the city and had a breakdown. She is projecting her failures onto me. Jenna looked uncertain. She looked from Marlene to me. But, Marlene, Jenna said softly, you did say that things were tight. You told me last Christmas that Bianca moving back in was a godsend. You said her rent was basically covering Tyler's share so he could focus on his art. The air left the room. Tyler froze. Marlene froze. I looked at Aunt Jenna. She said my rent was covering Tyler. Jenna shrank back, realizing she had stepped on a landmine. She just said that families help each other, that since Tyler does not have a steady income yet, your contribution was helping him breathe. Helping him breathe. I repeated. I looked at Tyler. He was 28 years old. He was wearing $200 sneakers. He was drinking tea in a warm apartment while I was living in a hotel room that smelled of bleach. "So that is it," I said quietly. "I am the oxygen tank." Tyler slammed his mug down on the table. Tea splashed over the rim. "Stop acting like a martyr." "B," he shouted. "So what? So what if your money helps me? You have a degree. You have a salary. You sit in an office all day. It is easy for you." "Easy?" I asked. "Yes, easy. You are a girl. You are practical. You are good at the boring stuff. I am trying to build a brand here. I am trying to create something. The world is harder for men right now. We have all this pressure to be successful. But the system is rigged. You do not get it. You are supposed to support me. That is what family does." I stared at him. It was the most honest thing he had ever said. He truly believed it. He believed that my purpose on this earth was to be the fuel for his engine. He believed that my labor was the natural resource he was entitled to harvest. Marlene rushed to his side, putting a hand on his shoulder. "He is right," she said, glaring at me. "He has potential. Bianca, you are stable. You can handle the burden. Why are you so selfish that you cannot carry your brother for a few years? A few years turned into 4. I said, "And it is not about carrying him. It is about lying to me. You pretended to be a landlord. You pretended to have authority. You charged me late fees on money that you were stealing." "I am the landlord," Marlene shrieked. "This is my building. I have run it for 5 years. I know every pipe. I know every tenant. Possession is 9/10 of the law." "Not when you don't hold the deed," I said. I reached down and picked up the envelope I had placed on the floor. Marlene saw the movement. Her eyes darted to the envelope. She licked her lips. "Is that the money?" she asked, her voice suddenly dropping, the greed cutting through the rage. "Did you bring the check?" I stood up. I held the envelope in my hands. I looked at Aunt Jenna, who was trembling. I looked at Uncle Rick, who looked like he wanted to vanish. I looked at Tyler, who looked petulant and angry, and I looked at Marlene, my mother, the woman who had taught me that love was a transaction where I always paid the bill. "You called me here to teach me a lesson," I said. "You wanted me to apologize. You wanted me to sign your contract." I tossed the reinstatement contract onto the floor. "But you forgot one thing. Marlene, you taught me to be practical. You taught me to be efficient. You taught me that if you do not pay, you quit." "Bianca, give me the envelope," Marlene demanded, stepping forward. "If that is the cash, give it to me, and we can stop this nonsense." "It is not cash," I said. "Then what is it?" "It is the truth," I said. I looked around the room. The peeling wallpaper, the drafty window, the stain on the carpet from Tyler's party. "Everyone in this room calls me selfish," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Everyone says I care too much about money. But for 6 months, I have been the only one asking where the money went. I have been the only one trying to stop the ship from sinking while you were all busy rearranging the deck chairs. You want to talk about rules, fine." I took a step toward the door. "From today on, the rules change. From today on, there are no more fake fees. There are no more cash payments without receipts. There are no more free rides for people who refuse to work." Marlene laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Who do you think you are? You are a tenant. I can have the sheriff here in an hour to throw you out. Go ahead." I said, "Call the sheriff. I think he would be very interested to see your ledger." Marlene's face twisted. "You ungrateful little—" Just then, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a long, sustained vibration. I looked down. The name on the screen was Evan Crowley. I picked it up. I did not turn off the speakerphone. "Hello, Evan?" I said. The room was silent enough to hear a pin drop. Evan's voice came through clear, professional, and final. "Bianca," he said, "I am calling to confirm. The electronic recording is complete. The county clerk just time-stamped the deed transfer." Marlene froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "The deed?" Tyler asked, confused. "What deed?" Evan continued, unaware of the audience. "The funds have been dispersed to the seller. The title is officially in the name of Sterling Harbor Properties, LLC. You are the owner of the record. Bianca. Congratulations. I looked at Marlene. The color had drained from her face completely, leaving her looking gray and old. I hung up the phone. I looked at my mother. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I felt a profound, heavy sadness, mixed with the iron weight of responsibility. I am not the tenant anymore. Mom, I said softly. I tapped the envelope in my hand. I bought the building. The next morning, the sun rose over Ridgehaven with a piercing clarity that felt less like a new day and more like an interrogation lamp. I did not drive to Briar Hollow alone. I arrived in a convoy. My car was in the lead. Behind me was Evan Crowley's sedan, and behind him was a black SUV driven by Lena Parkhurst. Lena was not a friend. She was a hired gun. She was a professional property manager with 20 years of experience in turning around distressed assets. She wore a blazer that looked like it could deflect bullets and carried a tablet that held the fate of every person in the building. We parked in a line. I stepped out, smoothing my skirt. I looked up at the building. It looked the same as it had yesterday, the peeling beige paint, the sagging gutters, but to me, it looked entirely different. It was no longer a prison. It was a project. I checked my watch. It was 9 o'clock. Let us do this, I said. Evan carried his briefcase. Lena carried a stack of heavy cream-colored envelopes. We walked to the front entrance. I did not use my old key. I used the new master key I had received at the closing table. The lock clicked with a satisfying weight. We stepped into the lobby. It smelled of dust and old coffee. Marlene's office door was closed. I could hear the faint sound of a television from inside. She was in there, likely recovering from the previous night's ambush, plotting her next move. Lena wasted no time. She moved to the row of mailboxes. She did not tape notices to the wall with neon pink paper. She unlocked the master panel and slid a sealed envelope into every single slot. "What does it say?" Evan asked quietly, though he had drafted the language himself. "It says the regime has changed," I replied. "We started with the tenants. We knocked on Unit 1B first. Mrs. Alvarez opened the door, clutching her robe. She looked terrified. When she saw me, her face crumpled. "Bianca," she whispered, "your mother? She told us. She said you are working with the developers. She said we have to leave." I gently pushed the door open and stepped inside. Lena following me. "Mrs. Alvarez," I said, taking her hands. My mother lied. "No one is evicting you." I nodded to Lena. "Mrs. Alvarez," Lena said, her voice crisp but kind. "My name is Lena Parkhurst. I am the new property manager for Sterling Harbor Properties. This is the owner. Ms. Sterling?" Mrs. Alvarez looked from Lena to me, confusion clouding her eyes. "You?" she asked. "But," Marlene said. "Marlene is not the owner," I said firmly. "I am, and things are going to be different." I handed her a document. "Your rent stays at $700. I said, "We have been freezing it for 12 months, but starting today, you do not pay cash. You do not pay Marlene. You pay through a secure online portal, or you mail a check directly to the bank. And if you pay, you get a receipt instantly." Mrs. Alvarez looked at the paper. $700. "But she said the new owner would double it. She was trying to scare you." I said, "And Mrs. Alvarez?" "The roof repair is scheduled for Monday." The old woman started to cry, not the polite, silent tears of the night before, but heavy, shaking sobs of relief. We moved to the next unit, then the next. The reaction was the same everywhere. Shock, followed by skepticism, followed by a profound, collective exhale. The nurse in 4A hugged me. The young couple in 2A stared at the notice regarding the new security system like it was a winning lottery ticket. By 10 o'clock, the hallway was buzzing. Tenants were coming out of their doors, holding their letters, talking to each other not in whispers, but in normal voices. That was when the door to the manager's office flew open. Marlene stood there. She was wearing the same clothes as the night before. Her hair was disheveled. She looked at the gathering in the lobby, her tenants. Holding papers she had not authorized, and her face turned a shade of violent violet. "What is going on here?" she screamed. The chatter stopped. The old fear kicked in. Mrs. Alvarez took a step back. Marlene marched into the center of the lobby. She snatched a letter from Marcus's hand. She read the header, Sterling Harbor Properties. Notice of ownership change. She ripped the paper in half. "This is fraud," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Do not listen to her. She is a liar. She is trying to steal the building from me." She turned to me, her eyes wild. "You traitor? You ungrateful, vicious little traitor. I raised you in this building. I gave you a roof when you were sick, and this is how you repay me, by printing fake letters." "It is not fake." "Marlene," I said. "Get out," she screamed. "Get out of my lobby. I'm calling the police. Call them," Evan said, stepping forward. He adjusted his glasses. "In fact, we would prefer it." Marlene paused, looking at Evan. "Who are you?" "I am Bianca's attorney," Evan said. "And currently, you are trespassing in a commercial workspace." Marlene laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "Trespassing, I am the manager. I have the contract." I reached into my bag. I pulled out the deed. It was not a copy. It was the original, with the raised seal of the county recorder. I walked up to her. I held the document in front of her face. "Read it." "Mom," I said. She stared at the paper. She saw the date. She saw the stamp. She saw the transfer of title from Hollow Ridge Holdings to Sterling Harbor Properties. "No," she whispered. "Vance. Vance wouldn't sell to you. He hates you." "He doesn't hate me," I said. "He hates the property manager who stole from him. He hates the woman who stopped paying the mortgage so she could buy sneakers for her son. He was very happy to sell to a qualified buyer who promised to clean up the mess." Marlene grabbed for the deed. I pulled it back. "You are fired," I said. The words hung in the air, sharp and final. "As of this moment, your contract as building manager is terminated for cause." I continued, my voice steady. "The cause is embezzlement, negligence, and fraud. You have 24 hours to vacate the office. You have 1 hour to hand over the master keys." Marlene staggered back, hitting the wall. She looked like she had been shot. "You cannot do this," she gasped. "I am your mother. You were my landlord first," I said, "and you were a bad one." Suddenly, the stairwell door banged open. Tyler came running down, wearing pajama pants and a hoodie. He looked at Marlene leaning against the wall, then at me. "What did you do to her?" he shouted. He turned to the tenants, who were watching in silence. "You guys are idiots if you believe her," he yelled, gesturing at me. "She is a corporate shark. She is going to kick all of you out. She told me last night she hates poor people. She wants to turn this into luxury condos." I looked at Tyler. He was playing the populist hero, trying to weaponize the very people he had looked down on for years. "Mrs. Alvarez," Tyler said, grabbing the old woman's arm. "She called you a burden. She told me you smell like old soup. She is going to evict you first, Mrs. Alvarez pulled her arm away. She looked at Tyler with a newfound steel in her spine. "She just lowered my rent." "Tyler," Mrs. Alvarez said quietly. "And she fixed the roof." "When was the last time you fixed anything?" Tyler blinked. "What?" "And she is not charging us for the hallway lights anymore," Marcus added, crossing his arms. "Unlike your mother." Tyler looked around. He was losing the room. He turned back to me, his face twisting into a sneer. "Fine, be the big boss. But you cannot touch me. I am a tenant. I have rights. You have to go through the courts to get me out. It takes months. I will squat here forever." I looked at Lena. Lena stepped forward, opening a file on her tablet. "Actually, Mr. Sterling," Lena said, her voice cool and detached. "We conducted a preliminary occupancy audit this morning while you were sleeping. We noticed a few lease violations." Tyler scoffed. "I don't have a lease." "Exactly," Lena said, "which makes you an at-will tenant. But even if you had one, you are in violation. First, we found evidence of an unauthorized occupant, a Mr. Jason Krieger. He seems to be living in the second bedroom." Tyler went pale. "Jay is just visiting. He has been receiving mail here for 3 months. Lena said. That constitutes residency. Unauthorized subletting is grounds for immediate termination, and there is the matter of utilities, I added. I pulled out the report from the power company. You are drawing power from Unit 1A. I said, that is theft of services. It is a crime. Tyler, not a lease violation. A crime. Tyler, step back. You wouldn't arrest your own brother. I wouldn't, I said, but the power company might. They take meter tampering very seriously. I handed him a document. It was not an eviction notice. It was a cure or quit notice. You have 3 days. I said, you can cure the violation by paying the back rent you owe, which I calculate to be 0 for the last 4 years. So let us say $40,000, or you can quit the premises, $40,000. Tyler choked. Market rate. I said, plus interest. Or you can leave. You can take your friend Jason and your gaming chair and go find yourself somewhere else. Just then, sirens wailed outside. Marlene's eyes lit up. She pushed off the wall. Here they are, she screamed triumphantly. Now you will see 2 police officers walked into the lobby. They looked around at the crowd, the shouting woman, and the suits. Who called it in? The older officer asked. I did, Marlene yelled. Rushing over to them. These people are trespassing. That woman, she pointed at me, stole my keys and is harassing my tenants. I want her arrested. The officer looked at me. Ma'am, I stepped forward. I did not scream. I did not wave my arms. I handed him the deed and my driver's license. Officer, my name is Bianca Sterling. I am the owner of this building. This is the deed. Recorded this morning. We are currently conducting a management transition. The former manager, Ms. Sterling, has been terminated and is refusing to vacate the commercial office space. The officer took the deed. He read it carefully. He looked at Marlene. Ma'am, is your name on this deed? He asked Marlene. Marlene sputtered. It is a technicality. I am the manager. I have been here for 20 years. The officer handed the deed back to me. This looks like a civil matter regarding employment, he said. But regarding the property, the paperwork is clear. Ms. Sterling here is the owner. He turned to Marlene. Ma'am, if the owner has asked you to leave the office, you have to leave. You cannot obstruct her access to the building. Marlene looked at the officer, then at me, then at the tenants. Her power had evaporated. The badge she thought would protect her had just validated her defeat. Fine, she hissed. She walked to the office door. She slammed it shut. We heard the lock click. She is locking herself in. Evan noted. Let her, I said. She has 24 hours. Tomorrow. We changed the locks. I turned to the tenants. I am sorry for the scene. I said, please, go back to your homes. The new portal information is in the letter. If you have any issues, call Lena. Slowly, the hallway cleared. Mrs. Alvarez squeezed my hand one last time before disappearing into her apartment. Soon, it was just me, Evan, Lena, and Tyler standing in the lobby. Marlene was barricaded in the office. Tyler looked at me. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The swagger was gone. You really are a monster, he whispered. You planned this. You set us up. I didn't set you up. Tyler, I said, I just turned on the lights. He turned and ran up the stairs. Lena looked at me. Do you want me to stay? No, I said. I will handle the lockup. You get the portal running. Evan and Lena left. I was alone in the lobby of my building. I walked over to the office door. I could hear Marlene inside. She wasn't packing. She was tearing things. I heard the sound of paper ripping, of files being thrown against the wall. Mom, I said through the wood, it is over. The noise stopped. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, Marlene spoke. Her voice was not the voice of a mother. It was not the voice of a landlord. It was the voice of something ancient and cornered. You think you won, she said, her voice low and vibrating through the door. You think a piece of paper makes you safe? I didn't answer. I know things about you. Bianca, she hissed. I know your secrets. I know your fears. If you think I am going to walk away and let you have my kingdom, you are wrong. There was a heavy thud against the door, as if she had thrown her body weight against it. If I don't own this building, she screamed, suddenly loud enough to echo down the empty hallway. Then nobody does. I will burn it down before I let you keep it. If I go down, I am dragging you down with me. I took a step back. The hair on my arms stood up. This wasn't just a temper tantrum. It was a promise. I looked at the fire alarm pull station on the wall next to me. I realized then that the hardest part wasn't buying the building. The hardest part was going to be surviving the eviction. The mediation took place 72 hours later. We did not hold it in the damp, musty office Marlene had occupied for 2 decades. We held it in a rented conference room at a community center 2 blocks away. It was neutral ground. The walls were painted a calming shade of blue, and the air conditioner hummed with a reliable efficiency that Briar Hollow had never known. I sat on one side of the long table. Evan Crowley sat to my right, a stack of bound documents in front of him. On the other side sat Marlene and Tyler. They looked like refugees from a reality they could no longer control. Marlene was wearing sunglasses indoors, a futile attempt to hide eyes that I knew were swollen from rage and sleeplessness. Tyler was slumped in his chair, tapping his foot in a rhythm of nervous aggression. Evan cleared his throat. He did not look at them with pity or malice. He looked at them like variables in an equation that needed to be balanced. "This meeting is recorded and transcribed," Evan stated, gesturing to the digital recorder in the center of the table. "The purpose is to establish the terms of transition regarding the ownership and management of the property located at 1400 Briar Lane." Marlene scoffed. She removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes that were cold and hard. "Transition," she spat. "You mean theft? You mean a hostile takeover by a daughter who thinks she is better than the people who made her?" I placed a hand on the table. "We are not here to debate morality." "Mom," I said, "we are here to discuss arithmetic." I opened the file in front of me. "For the last 6 months," I began, keeping my voice level, "I have conducted a forensic audit of the building's finances. I have cross-referenced the rent rolls provided by the previous owner against the bank statements and the sworn affidavits of the tenants." I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Marlene did not look at it. Tyler glanced at it, then looked away. "The total amount of unaccounted funds is $42,000 over a 24-month period," I said. "That includes rent collected in cash but never deposited. It includes maintenance fees for repairs that never happened. It includes the phantom surcharges for trash and hallway lighting." "That is ridiculous," Marlene said, waving her hand. "I use that money for operations. Cash flow is fluid. You do not understand how hard it is to run a building." I continued, ignoring her. "In addition, there is the matter of the utilities. Unit 1A. My unit was charged for electricity consumed by Unit 2B, Tyler's unit. The total excess billing amounts to $3,400 over 4 years. I looked at Tyler. "You have been mining cryptocurrency on a rig connected to my meter, haven't you?" I asked. Tyler flinched. "I was just testing the hardware." "You were stealing power." I said, "That is a felony." "Tyler." Marlene slammed her hand on the table. "Stop it," she screamed. "Stop treating us like criminals. I am your mother. I carried you for 9 months. I fed you. I clothed you. I put a roof over your head when you were sick and broken." She leaned forward, her face twisting. "You owe me, Bianca. You think a few $1,000s matters. I gave you life. You are calculating pennies while I sacrificed my entire youth to raise you. You want to talk about debt. You can never repay the debt you owe me for making you who you are." It was the argument she had used my entire life, the emotional trump card, the idea that birth was a contract of indentured servitude. I looked at her. I felt a strange sense of calm. The guilt that used to crush me was gone, replaced by clarity. "You are right." I said, "You raised me. You fed me." That is what a parent chooses to do when they bring a child into the world. I leaned in. "But raising a child is not a loan, Marlene. It is a gift. You do not get to send me an invoice for my childhood 20 years later, just because you are bad with money. My existence is not your retirement plan, and my salary is not your interest payment." Marlene's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked at Evan, then back at me, searching for a crack in my armor. She found none. Tyler sat up. He tried a different angle. Okay, fine, he said, his voice taking on a wheedling tone. Mom messed up the books. We get it. But B, come on. I am your brother. I am just starting to get traction. My channel is growing. I just need a little more time. I just need a chance. A chance. I repeated. Yeah, Tyler said. Just let me stay in 2B. Rent-free, just for 6 more months, until I get a sponsor. If you kick me out now, you are killing my dream. You are crushing my opportunity. I looked at his hands. Soft, uncalloused hands that had never scrubbed a floor or fixed a pipe. Tyler, I said gently, opportunity is not free. You think you are finding yourself, but you are just hiding. You are hiding from the world in a room paid for by my labor and Mrs. Alvarez's pension. I opened the deed. The sound of the heavy paper unfolding was the loudest thing in the room. Evan took over. This is the deed of transfer, recorded yesterday at 11:15 in the morning. Evan read, it designates Sterling Harbor Properties, LLC, as the sole owner of the land and improvements. Bianca Sterling is the sole member of that LLC. He placed the document in the center of the table. This means that as of yesterday, neither of you has any legal standing in the building. Evan continued, Marlene, your employment contract is void for cause. Tyler, your occupancy is unauthorized. However, Evan added, Bianca has authorized me to offer you a choice. I looked at them. This was the moment. The severance. Option 1. I said, we go to court. I filed civil suits for the stolen funds and the utility theft. We file police reports for the fraud. We let a judge decide your fate. Marlene went pale. Option 2. I continued, you leave. I slid 2 documents across the table. They were voluntary surrender of possession agreements. You agree to vacate the premises within 7 days. I said, you agree to waive any claims against the LLC. In exchange, I will not pursue civil litigation for the money you stole. I will absorb the loss. I will pay the back taxes. I will fix the building, and I will walk away from the $42,000 you took. Tyler looked at the paper. 7 days. Where am I supposed to go? That is up to you. I said, you are 28. Tyler, get a job. Rent a room. Sell your sneakers. Figure it out. And me, Marlene whispered, you are evicting your own mother. I am not evicting my mother. I said, I am firing a corrupt property manager. You can live anywhere you want, Mom, but you cannot live in a building where you abuse the tenants. Marlene's eyes darted around the room. She was looking for an exit, a loophole, a lie that could save her. I didn't steal it, she muttered. The tenants. They didn't pay. That is why the accounts were short. They are liars. Mrs. Alvarez. She owes me months of back rent. There was a knock on the conference room door. Evan stood up and opened it. Mrs. Alvarez walked in. She was wearing her Sunday best, a floral dress and a cardigan. She held a small, weathered notebook in her hand. Marlene froze. Mrs. Alvarez. Evan asked, do you have something to add to the record, Mrs. Alvarez walked to the table. She did not look at Marlene. She looked at me. I heard you were meeting, she said, her voice shaking slightly but determined. Marlene told everyone I was a deadbeat. She told the owners I never paid. She opened the notebook. Inside, pasted on every page, were carbon copies of withdrawal slips from her bank, and next to each slip was a date and a time. I wrote it down. Mrs. Alvarez said, every month, $700. Handed to Marlene Sterling. She turned the book toward Marlene. On the page for last November, there was a sticky note attached. It was in Marlene's handwriting. Received $700. Thanks. Marlene stared at the note. She had forgotten she wrote it. One slip-up in 5 years of deception. You told the owners I didn't pay that month, Mrs. Alvarez said softly, but I did. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a narrative collapsing. Marlene's moral high ground, her claims of martyrdom, her victimhood It all disintegrated under the weight of a 72-year-old woman's notebook. Marlene slumped in her chair. She looked small, defeated. "Fine," she whispered. "Fine. You win. Take the building. It is a rot trap anyway." She grabbed the pen. She signed the surrender agreement with a jagged, angry scrawl. "I am done," she said. "I am done with you. Bianca, do not expect me to call you. Do not expect to be invited to Christmas. You are dead to me." I looked at her signature. It hurt, deep in my chest, but it was a clean pain, like a surgeon setting a bone. "I accept that," I said. Tyler looked at his mother, then at the agreement. He realized there was no safety net left. Marlene could not save him. She could barely save herself. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. "You are ruining my life," he muttered as he signed. "I am starting it," I replied. They left the room 5 minutes later. They did not look back. Marlene marched out with her head high, clinging to her delusion of persecution. Tyler shuffled out, looking like a child who had been told recess was over forever. I stayed in the conference room with Evan and Mrs. Alvarez. "Thank you, Mrs. Alvarez," I said. She smiled, closing her notebook. "No, Bianca, thank you for the new lights." The next week passed in a blur of activity. Marlene and Tyler moved out on Sunday. They hired a truck and stripped the apartment bare. They took the light fixtures. They took the curtains. They even took the toilet paper holders. I didn't stop them. I let them take everything that wasn't bolted down. I wanted the ghosts gone. On Monday, the contractors arrived. We started with the roof, then the plumbing. I moved back into Unit 1A. It was quiet. The vibration from Tyler's gaming rig was gone. The feeling of being watched was gone. One evening, a month later, I stood in the hallway of Briar Hollow. It was 6 o'clock. The sun had set. Outside, the autumn wind was stripping the trees bare, but inside, it was warm. I looked up. The ceiling was freshly painted, white and clean. The old, flickering fluorescent tubes had been replaced with soft, warm LED fixtures. The carpet on the stairs had been steam cleaned. The stain from Tyler's party finally erased. On the wall, next to the mailboxes, was a new bulletin board. It was glass enclosed and locked. Inside, there was a single notice. Sterling Harbor Properties monthly update rent payments are due on the 1st via the online portal. Emergency repair hotline 555-0199. Community meeting Thursday at 7 p.m. There were no threats, no neon pink demands, no handwritten notes about cash. I heard a door open. Marcus came out of 2A, the unit next to where Tyler used to live. He was carrying his bike. "Hey, Ms. Sterling?" he said, nodding. "Hey, Marcus," I said. "Just Bianca is fine." He smiled. "The new bike rack out back is great. Thanks for that." He rode off to work. I stood there, listening to the building. I could hear the hum of the new boiler. I could hear Mrs. Alvarez's television. I could hear the silence where my mother's shouting used to be. I touched the wall. It was solid brick. I had spent my life thinking that family was a debt I could never pay off. I thought that love meant letting people take pieces of you until there was nothing left. I was wrong. I didn't buy this building to get revenge on my mother. I didn't buy it to punish my brother. I bought it because I realized that some boundaries cannot be drawn with words. Some boundaries have to be drawn with deeds legal, notarized, and recorded. I bought it so that no one in this hallway would ever again have to pay for family with a late fee. I walked to the front door and looked out at the street. The streetlight flickered on, illuminating the path ahead. My bank account was empty. My family was gone. But for the first time in 30 years, the roof over my head was actually mine, and that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening while driving, cooking, or maybe just relaxing at home? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed seeing justice served, make sure to subscribe to the Veronica Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share this story with even more people.